Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, Blake Treinen's 2023 season is essentially over. Some minor league free agents left the team. And what could the Dodgers do if Cody Bellinger is not tendered a contract? That's what's on tap, so make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is Locked On Dodgers, and we're here for you every Monday through Friday talking about the Los Angeles Dodgers. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And you can subscribe in either of those places or both of those places and never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio, and I'm usually joined by co-host Jeff Snider. But I owe Jeff a few episodes, so I will be taking over for today's episode and talking about the Dodgers. But just wanted to tell you guys that we are both lifelong Dodger fans that have spent time and currently cover the team in a few different ways. One of those ways being this podcast, where we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. So, with all that being said, let's talk Dodgers. And the first bit of news that we have isn't great news, something we touched on last week, and ultimately pretty much what we thought is what happened, and that's that Blake Treinen is essentially done for the next season. He had surgery on Friday to repair or help out, whatever. I don't know what exactly what was wrong with it, but shoulder labrum, rotator cuff repair surgery. And realistically, the recovery time's about 10 months. But as we've seen with previous shoulder surgeries that the Dodgers have had with Hyun-Jin Ryu and Julio Diaz, they weren't exactly the same. But shoulder is shoulder especially when you throw a baseball. And even 10 months is putting it into next August, late August. I think essentially he's not going to pitch because if he is going to pitch next year, it won't be to be effective. It'll just be to get him back out there. So Blake Treinen done for the year. We talked about last week and the decision the Dodgers and Blake Treinen made to not have surgery, and ultimately it led to us where we're at now, where he does need surgery. So what does this mean for the bullpen? Is this something that really derails the Dodgers season? Obviously, on November 14th, no. It would be ideal if the Dodgers had Blake Treinen and can count on him to be on the field next year, but it doesn't do much in terms of, it doesn't derail anything or anything like that. It does open up the door for them to sign maybe a little bit bigger name in free agency as a reliever. Now, what does the bigger name mean? It might just mean someone they've already had on the team. Tommy Kahnle, Chris Martin are both free agents. I don't think anyone would mind any of those guys back. The Dodgers have guys that are, they can put out a bullpen right now that would be pretty good. And then if, compare adding the arms that either don't make the rotation or, Dustin May is one I think he's still on the fence. I don't know if he'll ever make it back to where he was as a starting pitcher. Now, I would hope he does, and all signs point, there's nothing saying he won't, but if he doesn't, he would make a pretty good reliever. They have Ryan Pepio, Andre Jackson, those types of guys. Realistically, they'd want to keep them as starters and starter depth, but they could become a reliever. Michael Grove fits in there as well. So they have those arms. And then they also have the arms that were already there. Inti Almonte, Evan Phillips, Bruce Dargrado, Vesia, Caleb Ferguson. All those guys already on the roster. Daniel Hudson should be coming back from injury. There's still Victor Gonzalez on the roster who was trying to come back from injury last year, just didn't make it back. So the bullpen could still be solid. But when you lose a guy like Blake Treinen, and this is what happened during the regular season, is that everyone else's roles gets thrown off. Blake Treinen was the fireman. He was the guy that comes into the biggest point of the game when you need strikeouts or you need big outs, and he was the guy that provided that. Now, the Dodgers were fine last year in the regular season because once it got to that point, or once Blake Treinen got injured, they had Evan Phillips, and Evan Phillips stepped into that role, and he took over that role. The Dodgers ended up leaving Craig Kimbrell in the closer role almost the entire season. So it didn't really affect too much because Evan Phillips slotted into that and everyone else kind of filled in behind. Now this year's a little bit different. They don't have a for sure closer as of now. Now they lost the fireman type. So now, what do you do with a guy like Evan Phillips? Or what do you do with this bullpen? Do you go full bullpen by committee and really try to stick to it? Or do you try to bring in somebody that's going to be the closer only? Or do you try to turn one of these guys into a closer only? And I think, the Dodgers could bring back Kelly Jensen, or that's really one of the only closers worthy. You're not going to bring back Craig Kimbrell. So Jansen would be, I guess, the one guy who could come back and be that closer. I don't think they do that, and I don't think they try to make anyone the closer. I do think they're going to try to legitimately go with the bullpen by committee. Everyone has roles in a sense, but not necessarily roles defined by inning, more so roles defined by situation. If it's the sixth inning and the bases are loaded in a one-run game and there's nobody out, you might bring in Evan Phillips and similar to like you did last year and not thinking, oh, I'm going to save him for the ninth. If you are in the top of the eighth and you got three righties coming up, maybe that's where you go with Brusdar Gratterall. And then in the bottom of the ninth, maybe it's two out of three of them are lefty. That's where you go with Alex Vesia and, so on and so forth. And everyone kind of moves forward. And, you know, I wouldn't want to trade for a big team closer, and I don't want to really bring Jansen back. So I think that's the way the Dodgers should go about it is, or at least to start the season. Hey, start the season with roles defined by situations, not by innings. And if things happen to emerge or things start to happen where somebody assumes a role more so based on innings, then by all means, if you want to try it out, go ahead and try it out. But I do think I think it's one of those things where not only does it help regular season because, you'll be able to put people into exact spots that you want them to work out in, but I think it'll, and I kind of touched on this last week. I think it'll help Dave Roberts a little bit trying to, you know, we get to the point in October where he doesn't do what he did during the regular season, and that kind of throws him off in October. And a lot of teams do different things in October, but if he's doing matchups the entire season, then when it gets to October, it would, I guess it would, in the end, I guess this would be more for like the Dodger fans that want him fired. Let's just say they go by bullpen by committee the entire season. And then once we get to October, he's like, oh no, Evan Phillips is a closer. And that's how he uses them. Then he would be justified in saying, okay, well, maybe, Dave Roberts can't manage in October or shouldn't be managing the Dodgers because he changes too much in October and things don't work out. So, yeah. But I mean, losing Treinen is a big deal for the Dodgers bullpen, but it doesn't ruin it by any sense, especially like I said on November 14th. There's still things they can do, moves to be made that can help out the bullpen. But as they sit right now, they still have a pretty strong bullpen heading into the 2023 season, and it should be one that is a bullpen defined by situational roles rather than inning roles. So that's all I got. Blake Treinen, good luck to you. We might not see you pitch in a Dodger uniform again, depending on how things go, because you're not necessarily guaranteed to pitch next season, and then you become a free agent. I do wonder if the Dodgers will go the route of putting on an extra year, maybe a little bit cheaper, and trying to tack on that year and be like, okay, you can rehab all year with us. But we want to kind of reap the benefits of that the next season at a cheaper price because we're already paying you for this year where all you're doing is rehabbing. I can see that happening, but most things, we'll just have to wait and see. So that's everything on Blake Treinen and the bullpen. There's some notable MILB free agents that left the Dodgers this year or this offseason. We'll talk about those, but first talk about BetOnline because today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline.net, the number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer to esports. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to betonline.net on your laptop or mobile device today and learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. We appreciate it. We would say if you want to ask other people to or tell other people about us, go ahead and let them know. Search for Locked On Dodgers on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. All right, so the Dodgers had 18 minor league players file for free agency, and some of those are going to be names that you've heard of, whether because the Dodgers signed them and it didn't work out, or whether because or signed them as amateur free agents, didn't work out. They signed them as minor league free agents, never made it to majors, or some guys that did actually spend a couple days with the Dodgers this season. But we'll just run through this list and then talk about a couple of that stand out. The main one that stands out is Yadier Alvarez. This is a name that Dodger fans have, or at least Dodger fans that follow deeper have known for a while. He's a guy that the Dodgers signed to a $16 million signing bonus back in 20 or during the 2015-2016 international signing period. The 16 million was already a lot, but it ended up really costing them 32 million to sign him because they went over the tax penalty and they had to pay double because of the tax. So for $32 million, what have the Dodgers gotten from him so far? He's been named to the one futures game, the 2017 MLB futures game, and he's pitched only 3.2 innings above the AA level. So that investment didn't work out for the Dodgers. I would imagine, I don't know what Yadier Alvarez is thinking or what they're, I don't think he's going to come back to the Dodgers. I don't know if there's anyone else out there that wants to take a chance on him, even on a minor league deal or even, as minor league depth. He could be a guy that maybe finds himself playing overseas in Japan or Korea, or maybe he goes back down uh, and plays in Mexico or somewhere like that. I don't know. He's not Mexican, but he can go down to Mexico and play. But yeah, Yadier Alvarez, your name was your name and your stuff was always enticing, but it never quite worked out. A couple relievers that are down there that ended up, electing free agency: Keone Kile, Hansel Robles, John Duplantier. Three names that you've probably heard before. Keone Kile was a guy that was a really good reliever for a few years with the Rangers, and then was also with the Pirates. He came to the Dodgers, was trying to come back from injury, if I'm not mistaken, but really, I guess, hasn't worked out, or maybe it has worked out, and now he wants to go find a team that could actually use him because realistically, you know, he's not going to crack the Dodgers roster at this current point. Same thing with Hansel Robles. Hansel Robles was a good reliever for a while. He had some closer experience, but he's not been good since about 2020. Was really bad last year with the Red Sox. Got let go. The Dodgers picked him up. He was not that great in AAA, and yeah, it didn't work out for him. And then John Duplantier, who you might remember from the Diamondbacks, he was one of their top prospects back a few years ago. Never quite figured it out, and now he will have to maybe learn to figure it out for another team because it won't be with the Dodgers or the OKC Dodgers. More like it. Tony Walters, he came up, was a backup catcher for a few days with Dodgers when Austin Barnes went away from the team. He's catching depth, nothing more than that. The Dodgers will probably sign someone else to be that catching depth. That guy that could be called upon last minute to be the backup catcher. Just because the Dodgers, they don't have anyone like that in the system. And then, Diego Cartaya is not a guy you call up for if someone goes on the injured list or something like that. It's more so somebody like a Tony Walters. So they could bring him back, but these are, like I said, the guys that just chose for agency so far. Andy Burns came up with the Dodgers, played with them before, got to pitch one of the games, I believe, and I think the same game that he got his first major league hit, if I'm not mistaken, or if I'm remembering that correctly. But yeah, just another organizational depth, along with Steven Romero, and Jason Martin. Martin came up with the Dodgers. Romero came up but didn't play with the Dodgers. Both guys that are, like I said, organizational depth. They could re-sign minor league deals with the Dodgers, come back, more than likely play on OKC the entire season. So I don't know. There's notable names in the sense that their names. There's not necessarily notable names in the sense that it's going to really change anything on the major league side of the Dodgers in 2023. A couple of those guys, could they find themselves somewhere else and become something? Very possible, but um, it was not going to be with the Dodgers. So that's what's going down with there in the minor leagues, and that's what's happening down there. So, real quick before we switch up and talk about some other decisions that the Dodgers have, and namely that big decision being Cody Bellinger, the decision to tender him a contract, and if they should do so. Just want to talk real quick about Justin Turner again. We talked a little bit about him the other day, but the majority of the episode was about the starting pitching, and Justin Turner's option was declined. They did pay him the $2 million buyout. We haven't heard anything over the weekend since about Justin Turner signing with the Dodgers or being close to signing with the Dodgers. And it's just a matter of, we talked about what do we want. And honestly, I can honestly say if the Dodgers sign Justin Turner back to a 1 or 2 year deal for lower money, there's nothing wrong with that. There's, you set it in his head that, hey, we want you back because we love you. You're a Dodger. You're still a pretty good hitter. Your defense is not quite there, but we're not guaranteeing that you're going to play every day. You can definitely earn your way into playing every day, but we can't guarantee that you are, whether it's at third base or whether it's at DH. And, realistically, that's if Justin Turner is a bat off your bench, that's a pretty decent bench. So, it's just, it's always a little bit weird with this because, Justin Turner might consider himself still an everyday player. I don't know if he does, but it's possible. And if the Dodgers are saying, hey, we want you to stay, but we can't guarantee you'll be that everyday player. Well, as a major league baseball player, as a competitive person, you would maybe think, you know what, I believe I'm worthy of being an everyday player guaranteed. And maybe there are other teams that believe that and could also use my skills at the plate and my leadership on and off the field and all that kind of stuff. And, I was with the Dodgers for a long time. I'll still be a Dodger legend regardless, but, it's time for me to maybe check out something else. And while I do think ultimately ends up with the Dodgers, I do think Justin Turner is going to go out there and talk to some teams and really figure this out. I don't think he's just obviously not just going to say, okay, Dodgers, I want to come back and just offer me whatever deal, because that probably would have happened already. So uh, I'm all for bringing Justin Turner back. I'm not all for, just saying, hey, you're our everyday third baseman or you're our everyday DH. I don't think I'm down for that because I don't think you need to have a way to kind of cut bait. If Justin Turner does continue to struggle, or if he struggled with velocity, and he struggled with velocity. He started a couple years ago, and we talked about this in 2020. His struggle with velocity, and then he had a Charlie Morton fastball that was over that velocity range that he had struggled with for a home run. Uh, and it didn't change anything realistically, but he did pitch. He did hit better after that point. Last year, he struggled to start the season, picked it up really much, but the problem is when it comes down to October, and you look at his last two Octobers, and he's been really bad for the Dodgers, and that's usually when you're facing teams with a lot of velocity or velocity's upticked because of the situations that the playoffs put pitchers in and the adrenaline and everything else. So it's one of those things where you know, yeah, can Justin Turner be your everyday third baseman or DH and you're a contending team in the regular season? Yeah. But can he be that guy for you when it comes to October? And you can't guarantee that because, like I said, he does struggle. And now it's two postseasons in a row where he, didn't perform for the Dodgers. And um, it sucks, but, that's where we're at. And I do think the Dodgers are going to, like I said, try to bring him back. I don't think it'll be with the guarantee of playing, every single game. I think it'll be like you earn your spot and your keep, but also just know that, you might not be an everyday player by the end of this or even by the end of the season. And I would think Justin Turner, realizes and would understand that, but he's still a baseball player. He's still competitive at the end of the day, and there's nothing to for him to. There's not a reason for him to not think he can be an everyday player still, just based on how he did last year. Maybe not every day in the field. He did start to struggle defensively as well, but an everyday bat for sure in the lineup. All right, let's move on to Cody Bellinger. But first, let's talk about Locked On Sports Today because it's something you need to check out. After you listen to Locked On Dodgers, go check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All right, so there's been a lot of different dates I've seen, but I want to say the date for tendering contracts to players this year is November 18th, which would be the end of this week. And the main one the Dodgers have, are they going to tender a contract or not, is Cody Bellinger. I'm not really here to talk about should the Dodgers or will the Dodgers offer Cody Bellinger or will they tender him a contract. It's more so like what would they do if they don't tender him a contract. And there's a few different options. Let's just say, okay, the Dodgers do not offer Cody Bellinger a contract. They don't want to pay him around 18 mil that he would get for the next season uh, through arbitration, and they just, don't offer him a contract. Well, the first option they could do is re-sign him, whether it be for cheaper, whether it be for multiple years at a cheaper average annual value. That's an option, and it's a good option for the Dodgers because obviously they could get him cheaper if they still believe in him. Not so much for Cody Bellinger because I don't know what Cody Bellinger can get on the open market right now. And realistically, it's not a long-term deal. It's probably got to be in the range of 1 to 2 years, build up value, show something, and then maybe he can get a longer-term deal. But what kind of money is that for? And especially a guy who at this point, if you take Cody Bellinger really from the last 2 seasons and let's just say it's not injury, it's not anything else, you just can't hit anymore. Then you have a glove first, gold glove caliber center fielder, which is very valuable in today's game. And then you just take whatever you can get at the plate. And there's value in that. We've seen players make names of themselves off that. Not as much anymore. The game has switched a little bit offensively, but for the most part, not to that extreme. Cody Bellinger would still be a starting outfielder for probably 80% of the teams. Um, yeah, so the Dodgers could bring him back, sign him cheaper. It's one of those things where, as the Dodgers, that works out for you, obviously, because you get them cheaper. I do think like a 2-year deal worth the 18 mil with the opt out after year one could be the way to go. You're still going to get your 18 mil. Because if he's bad again in 2023, if he's bad to the point where he doesn't even make it through the season as a starter, he's not going to make much money the next year anyway. So if you can get the 18 mil guaranteed, let's just say you have a really good 2023, now I can opt out, go for some longer term money or bigger money. And if it doesn't, okay, I'm getting my 18 mil. The Dodgers might let me go because 9 mil AAV is nothing to the Dodgers realistically. And then I can find another team that might want me and I can maybe, still have another contract year to try to figure it out. So that's option one. Option two is to replace them from within, and the big name that everyone will think about, or not everyone, but people will think is James Outman because James Outman came up last year. He had a really good time with the Dodgers, really good, especially at the start of it. And, he plays center field. And realistically, the Dodgers don't have that many outfield options, at least on the 40-man roster. Um, and James Outman is that guy. Other scenarios for that, you move Mookie Betts to center fielder, you find a corner outfielder, you move Chris Taylor into a more center field role. You have Miguel Vargas or someone else out there in left. Um, you keep Trace Thompson around and you make him your everyday center fielder, which I don't think they should do. But those are some options that they have, at least with the 40-man roster. Now, if you go down and you start looking at Dodgers in the minor leagues, and there's not really anyone that's for sure ready. Now, James Outman might be that guy, but again, he's a late blooming prospect. He does still strike out a lot, and we don't know the extent of how good his defense is. We just, we know his defense is good. He's an athletic guy, but it's a lot different, you know, going to a different major league stadium 2, 3 times a month, learning all of it. Bellinger knows all that already. And if it's a matter of Cody Bellinger or James Outman and they're going to give you similar offensive production, then I'm going to take Cody Bellinger, even at the higher price tag, just because, like I said, it is the Dodgers and they can't afford it. But when you go down to the minors, I mean, you got Miguel Vargas, who could play left field. Maybe they want, maybe that's the way they go about it. They say, okay, Miguel, we really want you to learn the outfield even more so this offseason. We want you to be a starting left fielder next year. And that way it opens up, Chris Taylor to play center field, and you go from there. That's very possible. Andy Pajes is another top Dodger prospect. He's an outfielder, not necessarily a center fielder, but a guy, you don't need a center fielder per se. You just need someone to play the outfield, and you can move around as you need to. With Chris Taylor being that guy, and I don't think they want to move Mookie Betts to center field, so I really think it just comes down to left and center field. So Pajes could find himself with the Dodgers by the end of 2023. I don't think that's someone that they would find with them at the start of 2023. You have Jose Ramos, who's been doing really good in the Arizona Fall League. He's only 21. He's never played above high A. He's not going to come play for the Dodgers next year. Like I said, you got Outman, and then after that, there's really not that many outfield prospects. You get down to Ryan Ward, who hasn't played above Double A and who strikes out a lot, does have some power, but realistically not going to be that guy. So second option is probably one of the more limited options, because you got, if Outman doesn't work out, then you're right back to square one, but you don't have Cody Bellinger and you don't have a guarantee in Gold Glove quality defense in Outman, and you're kind of stuck there. Third option, obviously, sign somebody, not necessarily for center field, but like I said, an outfielder. If you sign Aaron Judge, you add an outfielder into the mix. At that point, Mookie Betts might move to center, or you put Judge in left and you have Taylor in center. That's the one, Aaron Judge is the only one where you sign him, and yeah, that's all you need to do, and that's all that needs to happen. And you'll figure out the rest anyways. Who cares who plays center field type of thing? Because that's such a big signing. Um, but other than that, there's really not. There's one name that I'm going to talk about right now, but other than that, if it's not Aaron Judge for an outfield spot, there's not really any outfielders that are game changers. The next guy in the outfield after him would be Brandon Nimmo, who had a good year for the Mets, who's probably a guy that would fit well with the Dodgers just because of making contact and being a guy that you can count on, and being a pretty solid guy overall, and probably not going to cost that much. He might get into the 20 mil range, depending. I don't know who's going to pay him, but last year he was really good for the Mets, and his he's good at working the count, drawing walks. He's upped his contact rate recently. Last year, he only struck out 17% of the time, which was a career low. He's hit at least 275 in a few of the last seasons. He's just a guy that's a solid baseball player. He's, like I said, he's not going to bring your team. He's not a guy that's going to make your team a contender by himself. And there's not a lot of guys like that in baseball, because two of them would be on the Angels in theory with Trout and Ohtani. But he's a guy that, for the Dodgers, perfect, because the Dodgers already have Freddie Freeman. They already have Mookie Betts. They might have another big name shortstop. They have the guys at the top. They need guys to fill in around him. Brandon Nimmo would be that guy. But I don't know if the Dodgers would want to pay for a guy coming off a career year. Usually you're paying that highest value, not always the smartest thing to do. So the last thing is trade. There's not necessarily any specific names right now that stand out for a trade. I mean, you could go through and find players and okay, this team's not going to be good. We should trade for him. But I do think that everything that's going on, the Dodgers obviously, probably Friedman and Gomes have a lot of conversations going. Those conversations are going to kind of dictate. I think what they do is decline Bellinger's option, but say, hey, we want to bring you back. kind of try to kick the can down the road a little bit, see, okay, what can we get? What are we going to trade for? Whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then if it comes down to, okay, we can make a really good trade for an outfielder. Sorry, Cody, we're moving on. Or if it's like, you know what, there's no outfielders, but we can make a good trade for an infielder and a starting pitcher or whatever the case. We can fill some other roles. Let's bring back Cody. Even if we give him close to the 18 mil, let's just bring him back because we have everything else in place. So we'll see what ends up happening with Cody, and then we'll have more conversations when that does happen. But those are just some of the options if they don't tender him a contract. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodge your first listen. Check out Locked On Sports today for your second listen, available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to find us on the same way, wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vince Samperio. DMs are open on all those accounts for questions, comments, concerns. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Tell your smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.